The next index law we need to learn how to simplify is when we run into negative indices. So if you look at this question, m to the power of 2 divided by m to the power of 4, we follow the second index law and we subtract the indices. When we're dividing, we subtract the indices. So it's going to be m to the power of 2 take away 4. That gives us, 2 take away 4 is m to the power of negative 2. So we end up with a negative indice. This is not the simplest way to write this index. We want it so it has a positive power. Let's look at it another way. We could have done m to the power of 2 divided by m to the power of 4. If we expand that and use the cancellation method, that's m times m, that's m squared, over m to the power of 4. So m times m times m times m. If we cancel out top and bottom, we are left with nothing on the top, or essentially we're left with the coefficient in front of these that is hiding out. So we're left with 1 on the top of the equation over m times m, which is equal to 1 over m squared. Hopefully now you might see a relationship between the two ways that we've done this. You can see that all we've done is put the negative index, to make it more simple, all we need to do is put the pronumeral and its index or its power onto the bottom of a fraction, and then it turns into a positive power. So the rule essentially for the index law when you have a negative power is something like this. A to the power of negative 1 is equal to 1 over a to the power of 1. Or it could be written like a to the power of any negative power, so a to the power of negative n, is equal to 1 over a to the power of n. So we put it in and make it a positive when we flip it onto the bottom of the fraction. What we're actually making by doing this is a reciprocal fraction, which means flipping what's on the top of the fraction onto the bottom of the fraction and vice versa. You might have learned about this in dividing by fractions when you did keep, change, and flip to then multiply the fraction. Let's look at a couple more quick examples. Let's simplify these two. The first thing with 4 to the power of negative 1 is we need to turn it into a fraction where the power is positive. So 1 over 4 to the power of 1. We know 4 to the power of 1 is 4, so simply 1 over 4, or a quarter. Let's look at the second one. The first step is to turn it into its reciprocal fraction and make the power positive. There's going to be 1 over 2 to the power of 4. 2 to the power of 4 is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which I know is 16. So that means simplest form is 1 over 16. Finally, let's look at these three questions involving negative indexes. We know from the previous index laws that if we have a power outside the brackets, we need to raise everything in the brackets to that power, or multiply that power by that power. So essentially, at the moment, they're both to the power of 1, so it's not nearly going to change the power. So if we expand by multiplying by this power, we're going to have 2 to the power of negative 1 over 3 to the power of negative 1. Now, using our knowledge of reciprocal fractions, to change these both to positive, what we're going to have to do is we're going to need to flip them. If we flip them over the other side, they are going to change into positive. So we're going to move the 2 down to the bottom and the 3 up to the top, and that will make them both positive. So the answer to this is going to be equal to 3 over 2. You could write that as 1.5 if you liked as well. Second one, same thing. we know that we're raising to the power of -1. So we know that both of these are going to end up being negative powers. So you might be able to see straight away that quickly the only thing you need to do to make this answer correct is just change it to its reciprocal fraction. So 5/1. Flipping this term up and this term down so that they're not negative anymore. 5/1 is 5. Last one. You can see that we've got a mixed fraction. So probably the most helpful thing with a mixed fraction is to turn it into a improper fraction. So this is going to be 5/4 to the power of -1. Then in raising both of these, 5/4, they're both now raised to the power of -1. Then we do our reciprocal fraction, which you could have done the shortcut straight to anyway, and you might have realised that the answer is going to be 4/5. Key points to remember: when you have a negative index, to make it positive, you need to turn it into its reciprocal fraction. So anything that's negative on the top needs to be put down the bottom of the fraction. Anything that's negative on the bottom needs to put up onto the top of the fraction. So you're flipping the numerator and the denominators. Only other thing to remember is if you have raising a power outside of the brackets, remember the previous index law where everything inside the brackets, both numbers, need to be raised to that index. And then we can then go and flip it like we've been doing with these questions.